country.
Okay, switched back, memory card ran out.
We have to get them competitive.
Definitely some union guys, AARP,
and none of the other plans really does anything.
and some Paul guys, so we can expect some heckling.
As we're talking about here, that affects.
If they're coming into the Santorum, that means that he's a threat, which is a good sign for Rick.
Couple of decades, actually, since I was growing up in a steel town in western Pennsylvania, is we've lost one valuable section of the economy. And that valuable section of the economy was one that created upward mobility for so many working men and women in this country. It was the key to the success of small-town America. It was the key to success of the American dream of someone being able to work and provide for themselves and their families. And that was the manufacturing sector of our economy. Manufacturing was always the key to economic growth in America. And people said, well, that day's over. That day's over. We're going to go to a knowledge-based economy where just those who have the requisite skills to compete internationally from a knowledge basis, they're going to be succeeding. And everyone else, well, according to President Obama, if you look at his plans, he doesn't say it, but look at his plans. It's simply redistribute wealth to those who can't achieve. We distribute wealth because we're not going to allow government policy to allow folks who are blue-collar or who have less skills than the college-educated that the President says everybody should go to. I mean, imagine the President of the United States standing up and say, everybody should go to college in America. What intellectual snobbery is that? Not every person wants or needs to go to college or should have to go to college. Well, hard work, getting skills, getting training, whether it's at a trade school or whatever, is good work and important work in this country. And yet the President just believes that, well, you got to go to college, and if you don't, well, we'll redistribute wealth to you folks. We'll take from those who have made, and we'll make you dependent upon government, and then we can have your vote because you're going to need us in order to survive and make ends meet in this country. That's a pathetic idea. That's an idea that doesn't believe in the dignity of work. It doesn't believe that people can and work and get jobs that are productive and can contribute to our economy. And so I put a plan together that says, you know what, the reason that manufacturing is not successful in America as it should be, I mean, we have a lot of manufacturers, but it's not what it should be, it's because of government policy. Government policy that makes American manufacturing uncompetitive. There was a study done by the National Association of Manufacturers, and they came out with a study that compared the cost of doing manufacturing in America to the rest of our 9 top trading partners, which includes, of course, Canada, Mexico, China, etc. And they found that if you exclude labor costs, we are 20% more costly on average. Obviously, more in some, less in others. But on average, 20% more expensive to manufacture in this country than in our top trading partners. What does that mean? That means that if you're a manufacturer in this country and you're trying to compete against those trading partners, you got to be 20% better, and that excludes labor costs, which of course in most of the countries we're competing against, China in particular, Mexico, we have an additional disadvantage. So what happens? Well, if you're willing to suck it up and make less profits, or if you're a business person who doesn't need to make a profit, maybe you can stay here. Or if you have some unique skill or some unique technology that requires you to be in this country, but otherwise you're going to send all or part of your manufacturing to some place where you can be more competitive. Otherwise you don't survive. So the idea that American manufacturers can't compete, we do. The problem is we do it in other countries. So it's not like the know-how isn't there. It's not that the products development isn't there. We're developing products. We've got the knowledge-based economy. The problem is we're not making it here because government makes it hard to do it. And that's why I put forward a plan that addresses those issues, that directly goes after this cost competitive disadvantage. Now people have said, well, why are you just doing that and not looking at it from the standpoint of all businesses? Because what I do with the corporate rate, for example, is I reduce the corporate rate in half, from 35%, which is the highest in the world. Talk about making us uncompetitive. You have a 35% corporate tax rate, and it's a very complex code, which bigger businesses take advantage of because they have big tax departments, that can find every single deduction and loophole, and the little guy ends up paying the brunt of the tax. So what we need to do is simplify that tax code, cut the rate in half, and allow a level playing field for small businesses and large businesses. Secondly, and I know small business is sort of a big deal here in New Hampshire, and so, right? So we make small businesses here in New Hampshire competitive from a tax perspective if you're not a manufacturer. If you are a manufacturer, we make you really competitive because we eliminate the corporate tax for manufacturers. And we do that, why? Why say, well, what's the difference? Why do you eliminate it for manufacturers and processors and you don't eliminate it for, you know, the local retail? Well, the reason for that is pretty simple. The rest of the world wants our manufacturing jobs. They want to take them because they're high-value jobs, they're high-paying jobs, and they want to make things because of the multiplier effect that manufacturing has in the economy. And retail jobs are not moving to China, but our manufacturing jobs are moving to China. And as a result, we have to compete with China for those jobs. We don't have to compete directly on the other jobs that are in this economy. And if the idea of the federal government is to just be neutral and to let the economy do whatever they want, well, that's fine, except the fact that the government has to recognize that there are different competitive factors out there, and we have to address those competitive factors to create, in a sense, a level playing field. And so we eliminate the corporate tax on manufacturers, which will go a long way in reducing that 20% cost differential that we have with respect to our trading partners. Secondly, we say that if you were a business, I was talking to a business person the other day about two weeks ago, and I was just, you know, working a restaurant, shaking hands, and I said, what do you guys do? They said, oh, we manufacture. And I said, well, I told them about our plan, and I said, do you guys make any things overseas? He said, yeah, we had to move part of our manufacturing. In order to keep the jobs here, we had to move part of our manufacturing overseas because there was a component or a couple of components that we were just so they were so critical to us, and we were so much more expensive here, we had to ship them overseas. And I said, well, what if we did this? What if we said, and you made profit? I said, yeah, we made profit on those. I said, do you bring that profit back? He says, no, we don't. I said, why not? I said, well, there's a 35% tax if we bring it back. And so we leave it there, and we're going to probably reinvest it in that country. I said, well, what if we eliminated the tax if you brought it back and invested in manufacturing equipment here, and we cut the corporate rate? He said, we move everything back to the United States. Now, those are the kinds of things that when you talk to average business people out there, who this guy in a little town in the middle of rural Iowa said to me that he didn't want to move any of his production. These are his longtime employees. These are his neighbors. These are the folks he sees at the restaurant. He wants to employ them here, but he can't because America has made us uncompetitive in the world environment. He's happy and he's excited about paying his employees more, but he has to be able to compete with his competitors here in this country and around the world. So what we've done, by allowing that money to come back tax-free if it's invested in plant and equipment, is provide upwards of $1.5 trillion in capital available immediately. We all know what's going on with Dodd-Frank and the confiscatory climate of trying to get money in America, the credit crunches, the problems with trying to get money, and the regulation of small banks that lend to small businesses and small manufacturers. Here's an instant opportunity for a lot of those manufacturers to have money available free, if you will, to invest in plant and equipment in America. I also look at the regulatory burden.